Hey, glad you're here. My name is Trish, and I spend most of my days talking about sexual abuse and exploitation in the church and in the lives of those impacted by it. I'm an author, a speaker, a trainer, and a biblical counselor. Sexual abuse is a growing problem, and it's expanding rapidly into our faith communities. It's affecting individuals, families, and entire congregations. Listen to this quote about the Baptist Church from Sexual Integrity Executive Director Daniel Weiss. We need to understand how our church structures, traditions, and cultures combine to create systemic problems that facilitate ongoing abuse. The church had no framework or context for dealing with sex in their churches. The SBC was aware of the problem but had no mechanism for confronting it head on. It's true, there are systemic problems within our churches surrounding the topic of sexual integrity, abuse, and exploitation. The church has the answer through the healing love of Christ. We have truth, grace, and love in our toolbox, and our culture desperately needs it. It's amazing how many atheists reach out to churches in times of sexual crisis. However, the initial problem is that there's a lack of awareness or a refusal to embrace awareness in the church, and this causes all kinds of problems. I've interviewed dozens of church leaders and pastors and elders about this issue, and when asked how they respond to sexual abuse disclosures within their congregations, they often respond similarly. I even heard once, thankfully, we don't have sexual sin in our church. I respectfully disagree. 92% of church leaders interviewed are unaware of any sexual abuse issues among their congregation. 92%. As leaders, we have to change that and illuminate this issue to raise awareness among pastors and church leaders. So is it true? Is sexual abuse impacting our churches? Imagine with me for a minute standing in the pulpit and looking out over a congregation. If we look statistically at the group in front of us, we know that 1 in 4 women and potentially 1 in 6 men are sexual abuse victims. These often cited statistics are over 20 years old and most certainly low. So if we think about them, then we add in the perpetrators or those who are struggling with sexual immorality inside or outside the church. Then also sitting before us are those who have been impacted by sexual abuse. Maybe they've witnessed a sexual assault, or they know a friend or a loved one who's been assaulted. And that is showing us a picture of who's sitting in our congregations. And when we stop to consider this, we visualize a grave picture of the vast numbers of people sitting in our churches who are impacted by sexual abuse. If we could see these wounded abuse victims, if they were visible to us, we would know exactly how prevalent this issue is. But this remains a hidden issue. We can see the impact of sexual abuse in our churches, not because we can see the sexual abuse, but because we can see the effect of it. Billy Graham often said, you can't see the wind, but you can see the impact and the effect of the wind. And that's how it is with sexual abuse. The presenting problems that people come to pastors for help with are often symptoms and signs of deeper sexual abuse and exploitation issues. Sexual sin is rarely the presenting issue. There are lots of issues that people in our churches are seeking help for, things like poverty, homelessness, unemployment, hunger, teen pregnancy, parenting problems, domestic violence, marriage problems, homosexuality, porn use, anger, eating disorders, drug and alcohol addiction, self-loathing, self-harm, mental illness, and suicide. And I propose that running in the background of all of these issues that come through our church doors is the issue of childhood sexual abuse. I have yet to meet a teen girl who's carved her arms up or has attempted suicide who has not been sexually assaulted. I've never met one. I've never met a homosexual man who did not have some form of sexual abuse in his childhood. Never one. I've never met a trafficking victim or sex worker who was not abused as a child. Never. I'm not making any judgments here, and I certainly don't have any data to back it up. I just know what I know from working with thousands of victims and people who struggle. The sexual sin affects everyone. And it's rarely the presenting issue because it's hidden. It's virtually invisible. It's unseen. And oftentimes the victims themselves don't even know what they need. Many church leaders, when faced with sexual abuse issues, want to get rid of it as soon as they can. It's like a hot potato, and it comes through the door, and they want it to be gone. The mindset is, who can we refer them to so that they can get the help they need with the least amount of damage to them, myself, and our church? And so by ignoring this problem, we can bring harm to our church that we don't even know about. If we believe what we say, that God is the ultimate healer, why are we referring people seeking Christ in a sexual crisis back into a secular setting? We should have the best answers for the sexually broken who come through our doors. So how do we even start to tackle this problem? This quote from Jack Hayford sums up what our response as the church to sexual abuse and exploitation is to be. Our God is a glorious Redeemer, fully able to recover and repair even the most damaged soul. He's ever ready to bring us wholeness in Jesus Christ and thereby lay a solid foundation for the future. With that, walls of defense may be built, enabling us to discern and defend ourselves from the thieving tactics of our ferocious enemies, our weak selves, and our strong adversary. There is no bondage he can untangle, no hurt he cannot heal. For those who long to be loved but have never known how, God's Holy Spirit not only can bring a sense of cleansing forgiveness through Jesus Christ, but also will restore and rebuild the shattered temple of a soul and make it a glorious place for God's love to dwell. Let's bring this conversation out of the darkness. Let's connect and shine a light on the impact of sexual abuse and exploitation in our churches. Together, we can help our hurting brothers and sisters heal at the foot of the cross.